getting started here. It's 12:02. I'd like to convene the special meeting for the Port of Newport Port Commission to order. Before we get started, please everybody be aware, if you'd like to comment on a specific item, please be sure you fill out one of our forms. We'll put them up here, and this will allow you to speak within the meeting to any specific agenda item. There'll still be a public comment period before and after as well, so you'll have an opportunity to comment on at those times as well. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and start our first public comment session. Anyone like to have a public comment at the beginning of the meeting? Nothing heard? We'll move into our next agenda item. So this is the House Bill 2284 that we've all had a chance to take a look at. What I'd like to do is have our interim general manager provide us with a brief introduction and where we stand at this point, any information that she's been able to get. I've provided a draft resolution here for the commission to consider and discuss. If people don't have a copy of it, I think Karen might have one. For anybody in the audience that might want a copy of the draft.
I did not bring, I have 5.
You might have to share, but you're certainly, looks like there's some more out there. I don't believe yet, but looks like Karen has a few if you're interested. And so we'll allow the commission to have a chance to discuss that. And then any of the public comments, anyone that wanted to make a comment about that will have a chance. Then the commission will have a chance to revisit it and make any changes we might want, and then go from there. Does that sound good to everybody? Terry,
Thank
can
you.
you give us a background and update on
Well,
where we
I'll
are?
just give you an update. Before I drove over, I checked one more time. The bill has not been assigned to a committee yet. So we are still waiting. I'm not quite sure why it hasn't been assigned yet, but as soon as we know, I'll let everybody know. The other thing I wanted to let you know is that I spoke for about a half hour with Senator Rowland this Sunday. I happened to catch him as he was driving up the coast, and I had an opportunity to sit down with him. And I have to say that was a much more positive conversation than I had anticipated, and he was very encouraged by the updates I provided him about the work that we are doing in the port and our strategic plan progress, and I invited him actually to be interviewed as part of the strategic plan stakeholder intake process, and he's willing and actually scheduled to do that interview this Friday. And so it was a very positive conversation, and he really emphasized that he was impressed with the level of communication between the commission and the community, and he feels like open, transparent communication is the path forward for our future, and he was very positive about everything we talked about, and is looking forward to commissioners coming to speak with the Coastal Caucus. So I was buoyed by that positive conversation with him. And then I spoke with Representative Gomberg this morning as he was driving over to Salem, and he was just checking in to find out if we had success in scheduling our meeting with the Coastal Caucus, and we have not. I'm actually working with his staffer, who probably didn't give him an update, or he didn't have time to read his email. Anyway, we're working with Representative Brock Smith's office. David Brock Smith is the chair for this session for the Coastal Caucus, and so we're working to get on the schedule with his office, and we just haven't had a success yet. I think they're pretty busy right now, and he's organizing days for the legislative session. It sounds like it's kind of a flurry of meetings constantly. So the other thing that Representative Gomberg said that he wanted me to share with you all was that he really wants the commission to consider the language in the bill and think about what sorts of amendment language the commission might be able to live with. He feels very motivated to move forward with amendment language, and I let him know that you were talking about that today, and so he's very open to supporting that and helping facilitate that conversation. He also mentioned that he doesn't feel like he has any ability to stop the bill from moving forward. So I thought that was important to share with you all, that he felt that he could help with amendment language. So other than that, I think you all know as much as I do.
Okay. Anybody have questions for Terry?
Somebody just said that you said David Goldberg said he doesn't think he has the ability to stop the bill from moving forward.
Right.
Does that mean moving forward being assigned to a committee?
I didn't ask that specific question, so I can't assume what he meant.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Anyone have any questions for Terry at this point? Thanks for that update,
Sure.
Terry. I know this is a dynamic process as it's fairly early on, and appreciate you keeping your finger on the pulse of everything going forward. The draft resolution that you guys see before you is underscore draft. To be sure we're all on the same page, port staff can't be engaged in taking a political stance on something, so the resolution itself on this particular issue needs to come from the commission. I took a stab at this. Sarah and I worked together a little bit on it as well. Of course, we want to avoid the impression of a serial meeting, so we kept this between Sarah and I. And so what you see before you is, again, just a draft for consideration. I think one of the things to keep in mind is that this represents the commission's stance on this particular bill and this issue going forward. It will be a template or a formalization of our position for the city, the county, and anybody else that we provide this to. So in some ways, we're writing it as much to public officials as we are to any other groups that are interested in where the port sits on this issue. So it's really meant to start our discussion now. So I know you guys have just had a chance to see it. Initial thoughts, I'll just kind of go down the line, or anybody want to start? I'm looking over at you, Jeff.
Okay.
Any thoughts initially?
Initially, this is the first time I've had a chance to see it.
Sure.
And I don't know. I understand it. It almost spends a bit of time talking about the amendments. I would want to make sure that it's clear that we don't see that we state that we don't see the need for it, and that we don't think it's the best course of action to appoint commissioners in that manner. That we oppose it on me and just as a matter of principle. I don't know if we could strengthen that up to make it clear. I would agree that if the bill should move forward at all, and I would assume, well, I'll just say for myself, that what I previously said, I don't think it should move forward, period.
Mm-hmm.
But if it did, yeah, you would definitely want to have the two amendments we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't want to say we would support those amendments and somebody mistakenly think we support the bill or think the bill has any merit, because I think it has none.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not based upon true knowledge of the Port of Newport, our situation, where we've been and where we're going. So I'm a little concerned there. The other thing I'm wondering about is, it is difficult because we can't have a serial meeting. We as a commission want to engage the state, but we can't just get on the phone with the five of us and start coordinating things. You're not allowed to do that, and understandably so.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what we would want to do when we talk to legislators is do three things. One, talk about everything the port has to offer. And everything the port has to offer represents decades of a locally elected commission building the port up. So that's number one. Number two, I think we would want to say what's been going on lately. And that would represent what the port staff with our locally elected commission has been doing. Number three, I think we would want to say where we see ourselves going, which includes everything that Aaron has been working diligently on with peer approach on Port Dock 5, or Terry and Aaron talking with Stephen about how we can, with a much improved process and looking at reintroducing shipping. It would be nice that if we, and maybe this resolution isn't the place for that, but somewhere I think we've got to bring that information to bear. Maybe we just carry it individually and tell our own story individually. I don't know. But we want to engage the legislatures. I was thinking that maybe the resolution would be the document with which we engage the legislators, but it doesn't have that type of information that really explains what we have to offer, what's been happening lately, and where we're going. And so maybe that's just something that isn't part of this resolution. So my initial thoughts on looking at it for 5 minutes.
Okay. I mean, I think to that point, and Terry, you can jump in here. I think what you're talking about is absolutely what we need to bring to the Coastal Caucus, the committee who, if presuming this gets passed on to committee, that's the kind of information we need to have. And I think Terry and I have been talking about the development of talking points of some of these things, just like what you're talking about, that, you know, are an evolving document that all the commissioners need to take a stake in, not only to understand, but also to be able to comment on, so that things like that you just mentioned get captured, and that we all get a copy of those, so we're ready to speak to this wherever we're at, in whatever form. I think, you know, Terry, your comments on including that at the resolution, I mean, those are just my thoughts. Is that seem in line with what you've?
Yeah, I think both in my conversation with Representative Gomberg and Senator Roland, and actually others, they have talked about resolution needs to be very specific about the bill and how the commission feels about the bill. And any other information, as Stuart mentioned, we are putting together some communications tools, and hopefully I'll know by the end of the week or next week early if we'll have someone who's going to help us with some drone footage and some video information about what the port has to offer, and things that we could share links with folks and put it on our website and our Facebook page and things like that we could make available to people, as well as talk with them about those points, you know, about the port, to educate folks. So.
And I apologize, I should have probably provided a little bit more context to this in terms of the rationale. As you guys have seen just briefly in the draft here, the recitals at the beginning of the resolution really speak to some of the background on the port for those representatives who may not have that concept or may not understand exactly some of what the port, how long it's, when it was created, what it's involved with, some of the priorities that we have. I think the resolution itself, Section 1, I think goes to the heart of what you're talking about, which basically says that we don't feel this is in the best interests of the Port District, and we don't support advancing this bill out of committee. Basically, it should die in committee and not be moved forward. I think the other two sections, Section 2 and Section 3, and 4, go to the what-if scenarios, that if in fact it is moved on in committee, that one, we want some consistency in this to other bills that at least that we've referenced there. I think it specifically goes to these two amendments at a minimum, which is that we don't feel that there needs to be specific qualifications included in this bill, and and Section 4 speaks really to the heart of arguably one of the most important things that I think we need to consider if this moves forward in committee, and that is that this needs to be moved forward to include a voice of the electors in the electorate in the Port District. And I think that's an absolute, presuming it moves forward. The other, Section 5 and Section 6, obviously, just talk a little bit more about when this resolution would go into effect and where we would send it. So, again, a little bit of context to it. But, Walter, did you have initial thoughts? And we'll get back to everybody after we hear from the public as well.
Initial thoughts, I think that Terry brought it up. I think you did a good job of making sure it was specific to legislation. I think that Jeff points about other talking points. Those need to be worked with us and with staff, and then those brought to Salem when we go up there. I would just ask if the staff is allowed to work on these talking points with us. If they're not, this is going to be part of our.
Well, I think the talking points would be more an assembling of factual aspects of the port. So it's informational aspects. And I think to some extent that's what Jeff gets at.
Yeah.
One of the difficulties we have is reminding folks of what we have here, which are factual things, what the size of the space we have available to us at the international terminal. Some of these other things, I think that's what, Terry, forgive me, Terry, I kind of spoke for you there. But.
No, but I think your question was, can the staff
Yeah.
work on assembling that? Yes.
Okay,
And that's the plan.
That's
Yes.
my main concern.
Yep.
And other than that, I would just ask on section 3 is a question that come up with us and might be asked by our legislators is why would we not want the seats to have specific qualifications? And that was, I mean, what would be our answer to that? And that probably doesn't need to be in here, but that's true. Just my thoughts. And other than that, I think it was good. Did a good job. And nice job, Sarah. And let's do it.
Thanks. Sarah, thoughts?
Well, we went back and forth a little bit, but I think the important thing is Section 1. The Port Commission rejects the bill, and it's not in the best interest of the Port District. And as such, the Port Commission does not support advancing this bill out of committee. I mean, that, as our first statement as a commission, I think says where we stand. And then the specifics. I did have a little trouble with recognizing the Port of Coos Bay bill, but after reading it and thinking about it, it is directed to the legislature, and we do want them to provide consistency across the state if they what's good for the goose is, so. But I did wonder about the merits of that, but after thinking about it, I would like that to stay in. And the rest of it I think is pretty succinct, and so I'm happy with it.
Great. Jim?
Well, I don't want to really reiterate what all the other commissioners have said, but Section 1 is paramount, and the fact that it's first is appropriate, and I mean that's really our goal. Right? This is my first time seeing this too. I was kind of curious about the reference to Coos Bay, but after what Sarah just said, I mean that does make sense, and it is a good comparison because it's apples to oranges really. So just with reviewing this for a few minutes, I support it, and I thank you for putting it together. I think with what Terry said earlier with Gomberg really wanting to see amendment language, I guess it makes sense that we're providing that, but really our goal is to not have this advance. So that's reiterating what was said, but that's,
Maybe
I'm on the same page.
Capital letters for Section 1.
Bold.
Underline. I thank you for that. I think Jeff touched on something that we might want to inject into Section 1 is that we just don't see a need for it. That we say here that the Port Commission rejects H-bill. I mean, if we feel that way, and I guess that's at the core of it. I don't know if it's reiterating or being redundant, but maybe there's some language that we can inject here that the Port Commission does not see a need for this for HB 2284, and as such rejects it, as it is not something along those. But I don't know if
that
that's
helps.
splitting hairs.
Makes it a little bit stronger language.
Mm-hmm. Jeff? I don't mean to wordsmith it too much right here, but in some ways that's what we're kind of doing.
I'm not sure because I'm sitting here thinking because we wordsmith it could get into the weeds. So I understand that, but
I mean, if it's fine the way
we
it
get more
is.
specific and say, one, we don't see the need, and two, we support local control. Would we want to put those two things in there as our reasons?
But I think we want to have a bold statement in section 1, I think, that expresses that we don't feel, and again, we say that we reject this as not being in the best interest of the Port District,
And
but we
Section
also...
4 speaks to the effort to remove local control.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we definitely say, but I mean, in terms of, has the sponsors of the bill really presented enough evidence that says there really needs to be this bill move forward and a law created? And I mean, I think we've all had a chance to read the bill and even the legislative concept, and I think it was a good point. But where is the formal justification as it's documented here in the bill as well as in the legislative concept? But again, I don't want to split hairs too much here, but
time is of the essence, and the fact that we need to move forward on this as fast as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So wordsmithing is not too much of an option beyond a little bit right here.
We could add a second sentence that the commission sees no need for this action, if you wanted to get need in there, but
well, we could, Walter.
So I would just say after does not support, I would just put nor see a need for advancing this bill out of committee.
Okay. If people are okay with that,
I support that.
yep.
okay. Okay. Yes.
Just a point of clarification. In the Coos Bay example, was that referred to the voters and did they vote for it?
That's correct.
They also asked for it, as
I've heard that, but I didn't hear if it indeed, okay. Thanks.
And I have a copy of that, though, if you want to take a peek at it. But there was a specific section, section 19 of that, that indicated, that put it to a vote of the people, which is, again, goes to this idea of consistency in the bills. If you're interested in it, here, Jeff, if you wanted to take a look, or anybody else. Are there any other initial comments from the commission before we hear from the public on this? So we have, I'll remind people again, if you would like to make a comment specific to something in the agenda, please fill out one of the forms in the back of the room. Right now we have 2 comments. Heather Mann, if you'd like to make your comment.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Heather Mann, Midwater College Cooperative. Just a couple of comments. I want to applaud the commission and the staff. I thought you provided an excellent summary this morning to the county commissioners. Really thorough, very informative, and I wish we'd been doing that for the months leading up to now because they really liked hearing it. A lot of head nodding, and so I think that was excellent. So I really want to commend you on that. In terms of the resolution, I actually really like what Walter just suggested. I think that specific language is important. We've seen what happens when you have a vacuum in the Capitol. It gets filled with misinformation. And so to be as specific as possible without getting caught in the weeds and down there, I think is really important. Obviously, we've been very vocal about supporting this bill dying in committee. That's what we'll be pushing for. The other thing I would say about amendments is it's a lot of work to go through a referendum process. This whole thing with the legislation and then potentially amending it and having a referral to the voters is a waste of limited resources, both the state's resources as well as the county's. And it's undermining all the great things that you are doing right now, right? Why would a general manager who's really qualified might think, all of the things that are happening are undermining that. It's potentially undermining the deal that we're trying to get going with even. So many good things are happening, and this legislation really does nothing but undermine that. And I think that's unfortunate, and hopefully we can carry that forward too. But it's a waste of resources to go through that whole process. So things should die in committee. That's all I have.
Thank you. Our next comment, Steve Beck.
I'm Steve Beck. I live in the district here. I'm going to sit. But thank you very much for hosting this because I think it's important that the word gets out as broad as possible. My comments are, how did we get here and what do we do about it? And they told us how to get here. And that was through disorganization or disarray and poor leadership and a revolving door for managers. I would address that in this. I would address their reasons why they think that they should take over, because we have to give them reasons besides we don't think they should take over. We need to tell them why they shouldn't take over. I'd give ourselves a timeline of hiring a general manager and making sure we get a director of finance, because we haven't had one for a year and a half. And part of their issue is our finances, that, lack thereof. And so there are things that I would address directly to them that they asked for, not in the House bill, because this is just their legal mumbo jumbo of what they're going to do, but why they did it, why they put this together, because they had a lot of comments that aren't commented in this, but we need to answer to those comments. At least that's my belief, so that they can feel comfortable that you guys are going in the right direction, because it does appear you're going in the right direction. It just takes a while. This was something that you had to turn around, and if this goes forward, the public is not going to be a happy public here. I talked to a lot of people. We're not just taking our votes away, we're taking away the opportunity to campaign and run for an office. It's a tough thing, and so we don't want to see that happen. The public does not want to see it happen. You have full support, I guarantee you, of the public. There might be a few special interests that, don't support you, but beyond that, I think you get a lot of support. And so, you just gotta be brave. Step up and talk to whoever you can. And I will do, if there's anything in people that you think the public should contact and how they should contact, I think that should be done. I contacted Don Berg and I sent Betsy Johnson an email. I don't think this is a good idea.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Okay, those were the only public comments we had on this specific issue. I guess I'd like to go around to the commissioners one more time and see if, with the slight wordsmithing that we've been provided here, if the commission feels comfortable enough making a motion to adopt this resolution. I'll start down here, Jim. Any other thoughts and your comfort level moving forward at this point?
I'm comfortable with this, but I guess I have a question. Can we provide an addendum that includes our progress and vision that is provided at the same time as our resolution? Or is that out of order?
Well, I think the resolution is a statement of where we stand. I think a lot of what you're talking about and what others in the public have said are absolutely are critical to the talking points that we need to get to Salem. I think it's expectations got skewed somehow, and we need to remind them of the things that are going on now, the progress I think the commission and the port's made, the directions we're going in, and all those things. Right. And Terry, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm not sure if this resolution is the place for that or not. Help me out.
I don't think the resolution itself is the place for that based on what I've heard from elected officials. I think that this needs to address specifically the bill. I think the points that you're talking about, Jim, I think those are the presentation that commissioners make when you're in front of those legislators.
Right.
In addition to the resolution stands on its own, and here's our story.
Right. So I guess my point, maybe, or my thought is, how soon can we get that to them, and can we get that to them in writing prior to whatever meetings we set up? Not to be included in the resolution.
I think that's possible. I think the first meeting that I hope that on the 31st we are in front of the caucus. That's my goal. Their first meeting this week is internal organizational with their own group and shifting in chairs and responsibilities and things, and then they have some people backed up on their agenda that put off last session that they made promises they could come and see them the first part of this session. So I'm looking at the 31st as our first opportunity to be in front of them, and then that would be our opportunity to have set, and we would have materials in advance of that date.
Right. So it's a process thing. So I support this.
And then I think, thank you, and I think to Terry's point, the information that we put in front of them are things that I think would be important for the commission all the way in on terms of making sure that these talking points effectively capture all of everybody's perspective on things as well too.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Because I said, I think we have a lot of things to be proud of, and we need to remind them of that.
Right.
So, okay. Yeah, Sarah.
I understand, we're anxious to get our good word out, but I agree with Steve Beck that we need to point by point when we get this information together, because we've had real detractors saying that it's dysfunction and disarray and really inflammatory language about where we're at, and I'd like to see us take those as one by one and have a response.
I think we absolutely need to do that as well. I couldn't agree more. Any other thoughts on the resolution or with the wordsmithing that we just did? Do you see, are you comfortable moving forward with this?
And so that we
sorry.
added nor see a need.
Yeah, nor see a need after support.
My only other comment was, I would just wonder if we should be calling out the fact that it was introduced by the Eastern Oregon legislator.
Yes.
I don't know if that really needs. We know it's from the Eastern Oregon legislator, but I don't know if we need to. If that could be seen as inflammatory language, and I don't want to get into an East Oregon versus Western Oregon or Portland Metro versus rural Oregon. I just don't know if that needs to be in there. So that would just be my question.
And how do people feel about that?
I think it's a pretty important point. Whether it's Eastern Oregon or written by the ILW, it's out of our district, and it's from far away. So I think it's important. It's an important point when talking with people of the district. I know that hits home when they realize where it originated. It's pretty far away from where we are and what we're doing.
So you'd say leave it in?
I think so.
Jeff?
I can see both sides. I don't know. I was going to wait to see what Sarah says.
I think that you can't be nice all the time. Call it what it is.
Terry, any thoughts from your background?
I think it's a really important point in terms of familiarity with the Port of Newport and how important the port is to the economy of this county and the city. And I think that it's important to help people understand that not only the sponsor, or the chief sponsor, but the other legislators that have signed on to be sponsors, there's no one that comes from Port City on the Oregon coast. And Greg Smith does have a couple of ports in his district, Morrow and Umatilla. Very, very different port operations, acres and acres, thousands of acres of land, and yet it's very different from the way this port functions. And so it's the apples to oranges thing. So I think it's about how important is it to this commission to speak to that. And that's something you all need to decide. If that is an important reason for rejecting this, I think you need to consider including language on it.
So that being said, is there a consensus it seems like there might be for leaving it in with respect to
I just
that?
bring up the question.
Yeah, no, it's a good question, Walter.
I just brought it up.
Yeah, it's a good point. But.
Okay. Let's, so I'll keep going down the line. Walter, do you feel comfortable enough with the edits that we made there, moving this forward? Jeff, I know we've all just got it. recently, but does it capture what your concerns and thoughts are on the issue, at least as a resolution at this point?
It does. I have another question after maybe finish with the resolution.
Now's the time.
Okay, well, if we're looking at possibly Coastal Caucus on the 31st, that's more than 2 weeks away. If this bill gets assigned to a committee today, that's an important 2 weeks. So I'm just kind of thinking, I don't want to leave here today and not have another commission meeting, or we've got one next week, and not sort of know what we're doing and how we're engaging, because if we don't engage, who's going to? Because there seems to be a lot of misinformation.
Yeah.
And I simply would like to get the truth to the decision makers.
And I think, to some extent, as Terry alluded to, I mean, it's just a question of getting on these people's schedule. And I think Terry's got her finger on the pulse of this in terms of as soon as humanly possible for us to get in front of these people, like we're on their wait list, if you will. Is that true, Terry?
Well, we're waiting for Representative Brock Smith to have the time. He's the incoming chair of the Coastal Caucus as of the end of the day Thursday. And so he starts making the agendas, and he hasn't engaged in that activity yet, according to his office. And so I think there's other requests waiting, just like we're waiting to be scheduled. But I think we also have a couple of individuals in our district that are working on our behalf to get us scheduled as well. So I think we'll get scheduled. In terms of getting scheduled with the committee, once it's announced what committee we're on, we haven't made any advances in that direction, so we don't know who to approach about that, but we will do that as quickly as we know. And so I mean, we're working as fast as we can and to get in front of folks, but we're also working quickly to get information together so that we have information to send to these folks in advance of our visits, because I think it's an important point that people have some time to review information and then have a conversation with us about it.
When do you think we might have that information?
I knew you were going to ask that. I think you would probably have some draft information next week for feedback. And most of that information is financial information that I'm pulling together. I mean, some of the interesting numbers and stories we've heard out there, I really want to correct some of those misconceptions and help folks understand what it is and what it isn't, in addition to other things we're working on.
So this week for our regular monthly meeting on Tuesday, potentially having...
Maybe the day after.
So then would we need to have another follow-up meeting to be able to discuss with them? Or what's the plan?
I mean, this can be a little tricky here because, as I said, I want to make sure that the talking points and the information that Port staff is piecing together does represent all of the interests of the commission as well. Make sure that, and it's not like I think any of us, as we all will inevitably be making our way to Salem on this issue at some point, would sit there and read this thing per se. But we want to make sure we capture the sentiments of each of these points and that we're consistent in our message. To that end, that's why we all need to be on the same page. So I don't know necessarily how to do that unless, Terry, you have another thought, unless we have another meeting at some point. Otherwise, we are a little hamstrung by not being able to circulate these documents, draft documents, amongst ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think I can provide the draft documents, and I can talk with you individually about your input and reissue another version of that document. And we can finalize from that point. I think we can do that without crossing lines and getting ourselves in trouble. So, and that might even be a little bit more efficient, actually.
That sounds
Try to
good.
do it in a meeting.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So
Does that-
that would be my preferred.
And after that, if we all felt we needed a quick workshop, we could do that.
Right.
And I think it may also be good to post something, or decide how you want to handle it in terms of our website as well. I think we're telling a story on behalf of the Port District as well. And if people have the comments other than what we've heard here already, they can provide them to you as well, so that we can incorporate some of that stuff into these talking points as we move things forward as well.
And we could have an initial packet that we send to elected officials prior to meeting with them, and we could continue to build that packet for our face-to-face meetings with them. And I think that's okay too. I mean,
I think that's vital.
I think
Yeah.
that's, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we want to have as many answers to as many questions and address as many issues with facts as we possibly can. And sometimes that takes a while to sort of get the whole universe of issues and questions and things together. So I think we can evolve this a bit.
And not to get too far down the rabbit hole here, but Terry alluded to the idea of creating some videos and things like that. We can send links to some of the folks on the committees and on the Coastal Caucus about the port that they can watch whenever they have time, or their staffers could. But it also provides a lot of context to what we're talking about in terms of the strengths and limitations that we have as a port. Might help educate people real quickly as opposed to an extended document itself.
That's a couple weeks out, though.
Yeah. We'll have that right away. But it's something, an effective communication tool, I guess.
I think we really need to reach out to our Port District voters in our locale, and I don't know how to do that so that they know their voices are heard or their questions are answered. And I am constantly telling the port story to the lady at the grocery store, at the bank, and everyone is like, "Oh, thank you for telling me that. I feel so much better." And so I think we need to figure out a way to mobilize that quicker, because it's pretty easy. I don't know how to facilitate, except on the website, be sure to call Terry while she's busy writing up everything that we need. But something, we need to reach out to them or the local people to answer their questions, because they have read a lot of misinformation.
And I think there's probably 5 or 6 different avenues to pursue that kind of communication, because we have so many varieties of means of communicating these days. So that's part of what we're working on, sort of what that approach will look like.
Right.
Because I agree.
I'll just continue talking to people at the grocery store then.
Maybe we should have our next meeting at the grocery store.
Yeah, we can meet at the grocery store. JC Market.
It's a great opportunity for transparency and confidence building within the district.
Yeah, that's the story I like to tell. We're an open book. Ask us whatever you want.
Okay, well, I think I'd like to come back to the resolution at hand here. I think it is important for the Port Commission to formalize their position on this. We have a resolution in front of us now with a slight modification in Section 1. I believe at this point I can hear a motion to adopt this resolution short of Karen's comments.
And I just want to clarify that the only change is adding Port Commission rejects nor sees a need for HB. Is that the only one?
I thought we were putting it after does not support nor see a need to advance.
That's the only change.
That's the only change at this point. Is that correct, Commissioners?
Got to hear it one more time.
Yeah, was
Phone
it
was throwing me
before
off.
rejects, or I thought it was in the support?
Yeah, right after does not support nor see a need for
Right.
advancing this bill out of
And I
committee.
think Karen said it was after rejects.
Yep.
Well, we appreciate the mood music, but it was just after. Let the record show Karen is very red-faced at me. Section 1 after the word support. So it says, Port Commission does not support nor see a need for advancing this bill.
So rejects is coming out and.
No.
No.
Reject stays in.
Okay.
Isn't it right down here? It does not
That's true.
support.
Okay, so this is where this is inserted, okay. Thank you.
So again, at this point, we can hear a motion to adopt this resolution.
I'll make a motion to adopt this resolution number 2019-1.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussions? Okay, all those in favor of resolution number 2019-01 as proposed by Jim, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. All right. Well, our next item on our agenda is the values, vision, mission statement, and I'd like us to take a very short break. As Terry, I thought we were going to make some slight modifications. Terry's going to lead us a bit on this. If we take a 5-minute break, we were going to possibly move some tables around a little bit.
So that we can do a little brainstorming.
So at this point, we'll take 5 minutes. It's 12:48, so I need to formally gavel the meeting closed. So I will close the meeting at 12:48 for 5 minutes, and we'll reopen then. Okay, 12:54. I will reconvene the special meeting of the Port Commission for the Port of Newport. The agenda will continue as it was written. We do have some requests for public comment. I'll encourage everybody again, if you'd like to speak during at least this process, please get your form in, and there will be an opportunity for public comment at the end at a minimum, unless, Terry, you wanted to see something different, as this is a
No,
little new to me.
we have quite a bit of brainstorming to go through. The documents that were included in the packet are what we're looking at, and so that conversation could take some time. You might want to take comments at different points through the process of the discussion.
Well, since it's the only item on the agenda for this,
However you want
maybe
to
it
manage
would
it.
be, if you're okay with it, we can see, we have one public comment now. Maybe we could hear that initially, and then when we're done with this, there'll be another opportunity for public comments as well.
Yeah,
So if that's all right with you.
totally. There's no science to this,
Okay.
so that's fine.
So why don't we do that?
Okay.
We do have a request for comment on this agenda item. Heather?
Yeah, I just put my name in case I wanted to say something. Flat-footed, but if you
Well
did
played.
at the beginning, I don't really have anything to say.
Well, there
I'd
are.
like to reserve the opportunity to say something later.
Absolutely, and like I said, because this is at the end of the meeting anyway, there'll be an opportunity for it. And this is a little bit of a nuanced process for us here, so everybody bear with us as we go through it, but we'll make sure that people that would like to comment have an opportunity to do so. Okay, with that being said,
Okay.
Terry.
I've got to stand to do this. So I wanted to sort of change the normal meeting tenor and shift into a brainstorming sort of mode, because that's really what we need to do to review the existing value statement, the vision, and the mission statement. And these documents, just to take you back, these were developed, the copies that you have, and included in the 2013 Strategic Business Plan. And you can see up on the screen we have a Wordle. Not everybody knows what a Wordle is, but that's what a Wordle is. Karen input the text from these documents, and we ended up removing the and just so we got to the core, and we actually removed the word port because port came up as the biggest word, and we understand that we're all talking about the port. But what you see, and the larger the words, the more instances the words appear in these documents, and so that's what the different sizes of the words mean. And this is kind of a interesting way to look at what the core phrases or words, things that are most important, you would assume, are the things that appear in the largest type. Yet, when you look at, because they appear most frequently in the documents, but when you start looking at some of the smaller words, those are as important, or perhaps some would argue more important than some of those words that appear largest. But this is intended just to get you thinking. This is not, there's no magical deep meaning behind this, other than this just is a visual reminder of words and phrases that appear in our vision, values, and mission, and thus they matter to us because we've used them. So that's just an explanation of what that piece is. And in the little bags that I prepared for you, those are intended to help you also think bold, dream big, remind you, you can open them and look at them, that it reminds you to, don't keep smirking at me, it reminds you to write down things that you think are important that we might not talk about today, but that you don't want to lose track of and you want to bring them back up in conversation when we review what we talk about today in a proposed final format. So you have a little notebook and you have a bright colored Sharpie pen to remind you to be bold and write things down, and you have little sticky notes that look like comment bubbles that if you want to add something to the conversation, you want to jot it down and stick it down on your table so you don't forget it. And then there's a little fun nourishment. There are some chocolate coins to remind you that revenue is very, very important to our sustainable future. And there is some Swedish fish in there to remind you that we care deeply for the natural world and protecting the ocean and the estuary. And I can't remember what. Oh, and there's a kind bar in there because that is. Let me think if I can do this right. Well, we want to be respectful and respect not only the environment, but the citizens of the Port District and one another in this process. And I think that's the deep, deep meaning of those little bags. So the business of what we need to do is review the values, our vision statement, and our mission statement. And we need to talk about things that we feel are missing out of these documents and statements. We need to talk about whether or not these are still written in a way that really capture where you feel the port is and where the port is going for the next 5 years. That's the context, the 5-year window of this update is what we're really talking about. And not that these statements can't be written with a longer vision in mind or a longer set of sort of ideal goals. But when we look at how these statements are wrapped into the report, these are in the introductory phase of the strategic business plan. And so this sort of sets the tone for the prioritization of the work that's laid out in that plan, and mostly the capital facilities plan. So we can take this, we can just start with values, and you can all read that the value statement represents your most deeply held driving forces which help us determine our highest priorities. They're the foundation on which we as port commissioners and staff conduct ourselves and perform work for the port. They serve as our guiding principles, the motivation for our goals, strategies, and actions to accomplish our mission. They clarify who we are as the Port of Newport. They articulate what we stand for and express what we deem as acceptable standards for how the Port of Newport interacts with users, customers, partners, and our own team members. So our value statement is pretty bold. Our value statements are really, I mean, I think they're serious articulations about, or they seriously articulate who we are and who we work with and how we work with people and how what we care about most and what holds most precious to us. So now we get to the point where you all need to sort of lend some feedback. Karen is prepared to make live time edits, and we can go through and add words. I'll take notes. We can, we don't have to finish this all in this session. My plan is to get input from you. If there's new words or new phraseology you want to use, we can capture that. We will give you back draft updates or an updated draft version to review. And then we need to get this approved and back to our consultants because they're coming the second week in February with their draft version of the plan for us all to review. So we have a week or so to kind of turn this around. So what are your thoughts and feelings about the existing governing values that we have? Anything anybody wants to point out that they feel is missing or?
And Terry, I'll let you
Yeah.
call on people however you want to do it.
Can I put you on the spot here?
Sure.
Since you're relatively new to the court here, when you saw these, what did you think? What was your thoughts on these?
Well, I think the biggest thing that I wanted to see more of was more specifics around sustainability and the environment, and I also wanted to see some stronger statements about, I wrote some notes down, about how we use our financial tools, how we manage our assets, and how we plan to build financial strength, and sort of that look at long-term management of the port's assets, financial sustainability as a port, how we're going to proceed in our business operations to that end. And then the sustainability, environmental aspect of things. I think there's a lot of opportunity for us now and in the future to head in that direction, and I'm not sure that we address that in as strong a vein as I'd like to see it.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
I wrote down a couple of words that jumped out at me. Maybe it's to what you were just saying, Walter. Maybe I don't know how you want to hear this yet, Terry. I mean,
I'll take notes, and if there's something specific to a statement, Karen can edit it. But I'll take notes.
Yeah, I was kind of. I hate to look specifically for a specific word, but so I kind of did my own little brainstorming on what I was thinking. And I think there's a couple things that I think we might want to elevate or highlight a little bit more in some of the values we have. And this was in no particular order, but professionalism, transparency and communications, financial accountability, as you kind of alluded to, where we can, maybe call it out a little bit more. We talk about accountability, but I think a statement about commitment to staff, support of staff as a value, collaboration, effective representation of stakeholders, and a commitment to access to facilities and personnel. And I was thinking that, I think that accessibility for people to speak with any of the, basically to reach out to whether it's staff or commission from a personnel perspective. I mean, again, thinking as a higher level value of saying, we're here to address some of the concerns of the Port District, as well as effectively manage the facilities or provide guidance on that. So those are a couple things that on my list that jumped out. I'm not sure how we would work those in, or if people feel the same way, but I'll start it.
Anybody else?
I guess leadership and service, our business is public service, kind of is a flat statement behind service. I guess I have issues with just the breakdown of leadership, service, collaboration, not the whole thing, but that we accept responsibility for taking lead on behalf of the citizens. Our business is public service to the commercial and recreational, that I think citizens and users need to be not separated necessarily. That the citizens of the Port District and the users are what we're responsible to. And the economic progress, which we believe means, kind of sounds weak to me also. We believe means kind of like we believe it, we mean it, we don't believe it means building and maintaining economic diversity in the community. I like resilient. I like to responding positively to changing conditions and circumstances. I guess that's more adaptable, to adapt. And public service, I'd like to kind of expand more on the quality of service that we can, bring to the users of and the public service. So the public service and our users to give them the same message, I guess, is important. And I think quality should be spread out more.
What do you mean?
So that, in leadership, where somehow we want quality, it's hard. And collaboration, is this something where you would name collaborative things, or just a general collaborative, it's federal government agencies when we know it's NOAA here, and federal government agencies, OSU. Do we name that specifically as Newport?
I don't think we name those specifics in here.
Right.
This is a pretty high level sort of guiding document.
Yeah, I like the word success a lot. And accountability. It was hard for me to come up with something because I'd be rewriting each section, so I was a little hesitant to get in the weeds too much myself, but just picking out words that I felt were, success and quality and responsibility. And responsible managers' responsibility shows up, but, really picking 4 or 5 real important, that's what we're mainly about, is quality, responsibility, success, and collaboration. But again, I kind of struggled with this. I was hoping that, that Jim had all the answers. So I'll just kind of
With my segment.
go along to get along. Yeah.
I think the words themselves are good and appropriate. I think the definitions are a little weak and maybe not forward-looking enough. I think we need to stress pride. I think under sustainability, however we rewrite it, I think it's about 3 different things. One is financial sustainability, which is paramount. The other one is facility sustainability, which is in there, but how do we sustain our facilities and not have to do major rebuilds because we keep up with it, right? So that needs to be in there. And then kind of to what Terry was saying, environmental sustainability, because that's going to help many things: healthy estuary, healthy fisheries, mitigation. I mean, that's building relationships right there through mitigation, and as well as finances through mitigation. So those are kind of initial thoughts on that. And optimism is key. I don't know if that's the right word to be in there, and optimism and pride. I think pride needs to go into that area. And really how we're always continuing to look forward for better technologies and better ways and better efficiencies. Things that we're doing, efficiency needs to go in here, because that's what, out of the last 6 months of meetings I've gone to, we've talked about automation of ticketing and automation of accounting and, these efficiencies, these kind of improvements in efficiency, or improvement in efficiency. I guess that's my 2 cents for right now.
Yes, Jeff?
So I really like that word efficiency. The reason that is a value, because
Yeah.
that's so key, and that really goes back to accountability. The board serves as a steward of public resources, but the efficiency, that really cuts to the heart of being a steward of public resources. So that,
Yeah.
I like that. And I agree with Jim and Terry on everything is there in sustainability if you read it, but it's soft.
Yeah.
Do not compromise the ability of future generations to meet their needs. Well, we kind of know what that means because we've been talking about maintaining their infrastructure and their financial viability for a while, but if you first read it, you may not make that connection. But it's in there, but it's soft, so I like that. I assume we would probably want to have another crack at this after the consultants come back from the 5-year review, because they have a lot of information that makes us think of other things.
Yeah. You haven't seen this for the last time.
Yeah. And I have to apologize because I have to leave in 6 minutes.
Okay.
So, now, the only thing other thing I would say is you may want to be careful because it'd be easy to throw stuff in here. But if we can be succinct and efficient,
Yep.
probably wouldn't, with a page and a half, big font, we probably wouldn't want to.
It needs less words, not more.
What about the individual underlying aspects of them? I think Sarah kind of alluded to that. I mean, are those what we want to stick with, or?
I like the values. When I first came on and I read them, I liked them. I read them again preparing for this meeting. I liked the overall sentiment and thought everything was there, but I really liked the focus on efficiency.
Anything, Walter? Yes?
Yeah. Well, I like the words if that's part of it. And actually, this exercise was almost a month, and then it took a lot. And
Right.
so, I mean, it was
A lot of work.
yeah. I think they gave us a good list of words and said take out a few, and then they picked out the ones that showed up the most. And of the ones that the company that did it, they said that the one they liked the most was optimism. They said you rarely see that in anybody's goals. And they said that you do have a pretty bright future in front of yourself. So I think that's something that I'd like to see made. But I also agree that it's a little verbose, and we could probably streamline it. Under accountability, I would think something that has to do with diversification of revenue, collaboration. I think that can be worded down. Instead of something in there, instead of listing all the agencies as call everybody partners or something like that, and that's just to not to wordsmith it, but to just narrow it down a little bit. And I think the one thing is kind of what you were saying, Sarah, is we didn't want to not address the people who are part or address them different as the people of our district versus the users. But they are different because not all of our public are users, and we wanted to make sure that we knew that we had both, right. And that they were each, even though they weren't users of the port, they were part of the port, and that's why we kind of kept it, if I can remember correctly. That's why we differentiated them, because there is a difference between, say, someone who uses it and other everyone gets taxed, but everyone doesn't use the port, they use it differently. The other one, and it comes up here quite a bit, and I think that as far as sustainability, I think resiliency needs to go in there, whether that's economic sustainability through resilience or environmental resiliency. I think that's very important. And yeah, I think collaboration, I think the last part about working towards common goals in the spirit of mutual respect and cooperation, I think that's a good statement. But I think the first part of it doesn't need as much definition. I think that we can just leave that words in the but I think that what we have is a pretty good basis for a little bit more refining that we weren't foreseeing five years ago.
Yeah.
Should be put in here.
Any other input on these? My plan is to take your input and massage these around a little bit and either refocus or, rephrase and see what you think about it. So, anything else you want?
I keep trying to think of a word other than adaptability that is basically that we're swift on our feet as things change. Kind of adaptability seems that there's a better word for being able to change with the changing times. Agility, like a gymnast. We want to be like gymnasts. But yeah, adaptability, there is a better word for sure.
Okay. We're going to scroll to the next. We move to the vision statement. So this is just a statement. It's not a set of values, right? So it's a little bit different. The idea behind the vision statement is to express more or less in future tense what we want the port and Newport to be at some future point. Since a mission statement and the strategic business plan itself are typically 5-year efforts, the vision statement looks a little further 10 or 20 years into the future. Our vision expresses what we want to see, what we believe we can accomplish if we stretch our capabilities and aim for the vision.
Yeah.
You may, because you have to go, I know.
Yeah. Vision statement, I think this is one we really want to wait for the consultants to come back on with what they're looking at the future of different industries that affect the port. And mission statement, the mission statement is short and sweet, and I like it.
Okay. They're asking us to update the vision statement now. Not that we couldn't add more to it later, but they want something back from us now. So we can talk a little further about it, but just know that as we see their draft report, we can then generate more conversation around this. Yeah. It's okay. Any other thoughts about the vision statement?
I guess one of the things that maybe came across in it, I don't know if it's quite as much, I keep coming across the idea of setting an example. We say that we'll be a premier Oregon coast. I don't know, it was just something that kind of jumped out at me. I think we have such a diverse set of assets and resources within the port. I don't know, I kind of feel like it'd be good for people to say, well, how does Newport do it? And to set that example for other ports. And I don't know if that comes across quite as strong. So that was one comment. I don't know if we need to put ocean observation and marine research support in it. Not the words of it. I mean, they're sort of one of the same a little bit. Right? Get rid of ocean observation.
So,
Well, and as Jeff mentioned, some of that, we may have some new words to put in there after we get the market study back and some of the other information.
Carrie?
Yes, Walter, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I just, before Stuart opened up his mouth and said leaders, I put leaders by example in the mission statement. And I think from the last process, I think one of the ideas that we were told, and I don't know if it might tell the same thing, is when we did the vision statement, it wasn't just what we see. It's kind of like us putting our vision forward, but kind of like throwing down a gauntlet for what the future commissions are going to do. You know, like this is what we expect, because we're not all going to be here 10 years or 20. You know, we're not going to be here. And so, what do we want? How do we want to see things get run, and how are we doing it now? How do we want to see it continue to be done? So, and I think that as far as the vision statement, you know, we have all these things listed. I think we could maybe say, find a couple words to do all these, but and this is just my ideas. And our vision is how are we going to move the port forward, and how are we going to be leaders? And I would say, how are we going to do that? You know, through collaboration, through accountability, or kind of reference our governing values in our mission statement and do it that way. And you know, like I said, all these things are important, but I think we can bring a few other things into the mix here.
Okay.
I like it, and I think, like you say, we'll know more about the listing, and like Walter said, maybe do a couple words or it's not listed so much, and embracing new ideas and new revenues, streams in a sustainable, environmental way. I don't see sustainable in here.
so I like the strong forward thinking or language of it. I think maybe something to the effect of leaders in efficiency and sustainable business practices, or something like that, to be part of our vision. That also potentially could be part of our mission. I like the mission statement. I think it captures a lot of why we're here. There might be something where we state in there as representatives of, or as part of this broader port district.
And you're talking about the mission statement now, right?
Yeah, I kind of went back and forth.
That's
The
okay.
leadership of efficient and sustainable business practices for the vision, and then in the mission, a statement that, or just a couple of words that gets to the effect that we're put here to for the wishes of the community and the district. Or reactive to the needs of the community and the district.
Okay.
Yeah, I think being nimble is important word somehow.
I'm sorry, Sarah.
I think just being nimble, being
Nimble.
able to react efficiently and quickly to changing, you know, the environment is changing drastically, it seems, in some places, and there's going to be things that we don't know that are going to hit us, but we need to have a strong organization to be quick and nimble on dealing with it.
I was not sure where it fits in mission or vision or values even, but I keep coming back to this idea of long-term financial viability. You know, thinking about big projects we do now and their effect they'll have later. The port's clearly tackled some of those, and I think I like the thought about new ideas, thinking about the future, but I think those have to be addressed in concert with that it's the long-term, the financial viability of those
Right.
long-term and new ideas, that we prioritize, that we're keeping an eye on that.
I think I felt like that was missing in the mission statement, a strong statement about financial sustainability or viability or,
Especially when you start doing big projects, you have to look way ahead when you do them. It's not just getting the contract done, it's what is this going to bring to the community at large in this region.
I think the word resiliency is a good word. I'm not sure exactly where it belongs, but it's very much who we are and what we need to be, and especially with this House bill in front of us.
what was the word?
Resiliency.
Yeah, I feel like that's a vision statement piece because you're really looking,
Forward.
yeah,
And maybe what I said about efficiency and sustainable business practices, whatever, however that's worded, would be more of a mission than a vision.
yeah. I'll have to work with this a little bit and then chat with the consultants and go back and forth on that a little bit and before I bring it back for you to look at. But that's always the challenge with these is what is the mission stuff and what's the vision stuff and what's, the value. I mean, it's sometimes hard to sort it out and so they deal with this a lot more frequently than we do, so they can help guide us in that.
I also think diversity isn't in the mission statement. I don't see it, or that wouldn't be the mission statement so much, but because we have a lot of diversity in it, just like that we're able to, foster and encourage back to the new opportunities and stuff, but in a resilient, in a diverse, to embrace diversity and, give it a home, something
It's kind of within, the word's not used, but creating new jobs and increase economic development. It could potentially be massaged into that piece of it.
because I think that's what differentiates us from other ports. We're way more diverse in what we have.
Okay.
Did we look at on the mission statement? Sorry. Look at the create new jobs and development as phrase that as some type of economic viability of the area. I'm just way short of a little bit.
Okay.
Economic viability and diversity. Something like that.
Is there any way to put in there that this really, that what you identified is that, and Walter, that this is something that, we hope would steer commissions in the future, or something that, we want this to continue year after year after year. So, that is what the mission statement is. But.
Yeah, when you look at the definition of the vision statement is really that further window. It's that broader window on the future and presumably guiding future commissions and that description is part of the strategic plan so that as people read that plan, new commissioners come on board, they read that plan, they see the context within that vision statement and sort of the intention. And I think that helps people understand that vision statement isn't just about this 5-year period, it's really a broader horizon. So.
One of the things in the mission statement that I don't know if I'm digging too deep into it, but it almost seems like it's a little sort of vision-y in some ways. it doesn't really state anything about the existing businesses or things that are in the port right now in some ways. I mean, it says build and maintain waterfront facilities, and then it gets more visiony, in my opinion. Promote and support projects. That sort of implies that, I almost feel like we have an obligation to not just build and maintain the waterfront facilities, but also the businesses and the relationships we currently have as well. It just didn't seem like it was necessarily captured. It was just me, but this mission statement, if it's what we do and why we do it, is, I don't know, when we talk about create new jobs, I guess so, but I think we also have an obligation to the people who are here.
I think it's a good point. Does anybody feel like a mention of part of creating new jobs is workforce development piece of anything you want to think about in terms of areas that we're responsible or not? Just throw that out there. There's a lot of conversation about it these days, and I just wonder if you feel that's a role that we need to address anywhere in this.
In the vision statement.
It could be a value in one of our value statements, quite frankly. I think the things that, going back to your question, Walter, about what were my impressions, I think some of the things that I didn't see, I think we've already talked about, but that workforce development, and do we have a role, and what would that look like, and how might we represent that here is another piece that I thought, we really didn't speak to that, but that's a issue on the horizon for all businesses. And I hear folks locally talking a lot about future generations having opportunities in this region, in this city, and is that a piece of anything we want to? I'm just asking the question. I don't read anything else into it, but I'm just suggesting that you might want to think about if we do have a role there, and if that is part of leadership or.
I found the same thing I had on my notes here, personal growth. I mean, I've always viewed an important part of some of governing values as investment in personnel. And I think, we want to make sure that we attract great people to work here as people do retire and leave. And I think if that becomes one of our core values, that we do invest in personnel, which I think it is in general.
Attract and retain.
Yeah, the recruitment and retention.
Yeah. And
the continuing investment in personnel to make them, just as we said, in the accountability phase statement, it kind of felt out of place is where we speak to human resources. And I don't think it's, these are our, like I said, our core values, what we really believe in. And I think the idea of investing in personnel should, in my opinion, should be a core.
It should be in the values.
It should be a core value in the values. And I'm not sure if accountability is the right place for it, but I think a statement or sentence about investing in that is something that I think would be important.
Maybe put that under sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Our most important asset.
Yeah.
Modernization is, I don't know if that's the proper word, but just being able to keep up with the times, whether it's through these efficiencies I'm talking about, but better, more efficient cranes that have longer life, or the computer systems we utilize for accounting, or the efficiencies and modernization behind website development that Karen's been doing. It's important to use the latest technologies that we can afford that can improve our operation.
Could that be in the vision statement? Like the charge to the next generation is, hey, modernize.
Yeah. I have a meeting to go to soon.
You're adamant.
We already lost Jeff.
We're
You're about to
waxing
lose me.
Yeah.
Okay,
Where are we at, Terry?
well, I think we're good, unless you have any other thoughts now.
I think the workforce bit might be important. I'm a board member that I'm having my first meeting with Northwest Oregon Works, and they had talked about they did have a program for marine job workforce stuff, and it kind of fell apart. And so they're hoping to revitalize that. And it was definitely around the state effort to get workforce stuff back up and running.
Yeah.
Monies to it and such.
There's going to be another bill on it this session. So.
Yeah, it is something that's on the rise.
Two out there right now.
Terry, before we lose Jim, is there anything else you needed from us right now?
No,
or
I was just going to
what's-
wrap this up and let
Okay.
you know next steps. So,
Yeah.
Karen and I are going to put our heads together, see what we can come up with out of this great feedback, and we will. I'm not going to make any guarantees when, but we'll get another version of this out to you, and we'll continue to try to work this into something that represents a little bit more closely what you're all thinking makes sense today. And then, as I mentioned, we'll have an opportunity to hear the other parts of the plan in draft form. And we're not done until mid-March with the strategic business plan and capital facilities plan, so we'll have time to come back and tweak things. And so this can evolve a little further. This sort of thing, it's hard to kind of get your head in the right space to think about it, and oftentimes you'll leave and think a little bit more about it. That's why I gave you a little book. You can jot things down. I thought that was kind of fun. I know everybody thinks I'm kind of crazy, but anyway. So that's it for this piece today.
Okay.
Done.
Well, just real quick, given that, we'll move into our public comment section. If anyone, based on anything you've heard right now, would like to make a public comment, state your name. You have 3 minutes.
Steve Beck, and just a couple things, and just mostly regarding the resolution. I would just put together a game plan and timeline to make sure that you hit the coastal caucus, which committee this might get to. If it does go to a committee and it isn't killed when the vote is, because I really want to see a timeline so you guys can be proactive on getting in there before the next thing happens. And I know that you guys are looking at it, but I mean, that's something you might have to get a hold of somebody on a daily basis, to, because, and then you guys have to be ready to get up there, whoever goes. But I just see this being something that is 75% already written, baked into the cake, it sounds like. And so if we aren't real proactive, we might miss the opportunity to be proactive. And that's over and above the resolution, which I think is great. And the last thing, and I just was wondering on your, let's see, the statement of values, or statement values, value statement. And this is, I was obviously, most of you know that I was on the commission for a year as appointed. And one thing that might help, and I don't know if this is where you put it in under governing values, but if you have like self-evaluations for each of the court commissioners where you evaluated yourselves, so, not something out that it's, if you're not getting consensus, maybe you need to know why. Are you going down one road and somebody else is going down another road and you're all in the same, 5 people working together. But just even if it's a semi-annual or annual evaluation amongst yourselves, I think that wouldn't be a bad thing to have ongoing. Maybe there's personality conflicts that you can take care of before they become, problems and that kind of stuff. But other than that, I think you guys are working hard at it, obviously.
Good point.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Yeah, again, I think the resolution is great. Oh, Jim, fine. No, I think the resolution is great. good to have that in place. And I think the statements about the consistency with Coos Bay and how that was, put to a vote is a good point to bring into it. I also, coming from the private sector, I always have Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C. Plan C is if this goes to the floor and you need to think, or you should consider about amendments to the bills as written, be it specifically about whose membership or what groups will be appointed, or groups that you will designate, be it the fishermen's group, the other special interests that may be involved. And then those type of things that you feel of value, that have Plan C amendments available.
Great, thank you. Anyone else?
Heather Mann, I guess I'd just say, I noticed that Kira's left, and I don't know how often the press listen all the way to the end, but it'd be really nice for them to do a story about how well the commission's functioning and working together. It's really refreshing to see you all being respectful to each other, but also actually working together and listening to each other. We've been doing that for a while now, and I think it should be recognized. When I see articles or hear people saying, disarray and chaos in the commission, we've had that in the past, but it's been a while, and so it'd be really nice to see that captured. I know it's not very sensational, so it probably won't be, but I think you should be recognized for that. I appreciate it.
Thank you for that. Anyone else? Okay. The meeting adjourned, 1:44. Thank you all.